if your camera's on. So,
No chance.
Hi, Gay. Good to see you. So if you don't mind, Donna, good to see you too. Just go ahead and turn them on if you don't mind. Hi, Helen.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Good to see you. We're doing Torah study just like in the old country, right?
That's what old country? I don't know about old country.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I love Zoom for this kind of thing. It's so great.
Yes.
Okay. Let me just, Hannah, how's it look? We've pretty much got everybody in?
Dave, before you get started on the Torah portion, can I ask you a quickie? You said that, which I think is marvelous, but I'd like you to expound. If you tell someone something and it is a half truth, it's a whole lie. And I think everybody does that all the time. And it's such a really profound statement.
Yes.
Would you expound?
Well, look.
Turn off the.
It's
turn it off again.
Hi, Ann. Yeah, everybody mute. Go ahead and mute. Everybody mute. Mute. Hi, Lynn. Hey, good to see you. You're the resident. Hi, Nadine. So Karen just asked me, what can I expound upon that Yiddishism, a half truth? Hi, Barbara, is a whole lie. It is the reason that when you testify, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, right? Because there are some simple examples of how a half-truth is a whole lie. For example, you could say, were you in such and such a place last night? And you could say, no.
Bye-bye.
Right? But you were there at 5 p.m. and it wasn't night. It's shading. Another way to look at it is shading the truth. And I remember when I read Crime and Punishment in college, Dostoevsky said something that I'm ashamed to admit I used in my life sometimes, which was, if you want to tell a lie, include as much of the truth in it as possible.
Right.
And maybe Karen, that's the best way that I can illuminate what I think is at the heart of that, is that you include enough truth. I'll give you an example that's coming to my mind right now. When Dave Chappelle on Saturday Night Live said there are a lot of Jews in Hollywood, a lot. And that's true, but he was using it to further the old trope of some kind of conspiratorial Jewish cabal in Hollywood. And he didn't go on to talk about that, right? So it's a kind of shading of the truth or a half-truth that really belies what the person is saying or is intentionally misleading. Salespeople do this all the time, right? Is this a new car? Yeah, we just got it.
That's a good one.
Stuff like that happens all the time. Oh, honey, that's a really nice dress. Is that new? Oh, I've had this for forever. Well, forever might mean yesterday. It's that kind of stuff. And some of it's playful and harmless, but some of it is deadly and dangerous. Scott, go ahead.
I just want to say a white lie is a half truth.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Scott, go ahead.
But also this intrigues me because I'm working on a project now about Shakespeare. And there was the notion of the Catholic Church during the Elizabethan and Jacobean era of equivocation, whereby in countries like England, where Catholicism became outlawed, one of the ways in which they kept it going was to allow anyone who was a Catholic to lie in the manner that you're talking about. So if they were asked, does so-and-so recusant lie in your house? The answer could be, no, he does not lie in my house, meaning he does not tell untruths in my house. not meaning that he doesn't sleep there because I'm hiding.
Right, 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 exactly. And the offending party, now sometimes it's for the good, of course, right? In this case, but the offending party always knows that they're withholding the crucial information that the other party is actually seeking.
Yeah.
You know, this is why if you've ever been deposed, and I unfortunately have a few times in my life, the attorneys tell you just answer the question. Don't offer any additional information. And it's the same kind of shtick, really. But it is I think, Karen, with your eyes open now, you will see this all over the place. All over the place. Okay, Sue Casa joined us. Hey, Sue. Okay, are we ready to launch in? Or I'm happy to discuss more Yiddishisms if you'd like. Or Yiddish curses. Someday we should do a class on Yiddish curses. My favorite is, may you be so wealthy your widow's second husband never has to work for a living. Yeah. Okay. All right. So those of you who have Tanachim with you or Chumash, it's Parashat Vayetzei, which is Genesis chapter 28. You can look it up on your phone too, or your tablet. Genesis 28:10. 28, chapter 28, verse 10. That's where we're going to begin. And before we do, we have the blessing to say. So please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Okay, so let's all mute except for Marty, who's our reader. And Marty, we're going to go verses 10 through 16. So let's just read this whole dream sequence. This is the famous Jacob's Ladder dream, which I know you all know about, but let's read it carefully because we're going to make some hopefully interesting observations about it that might not have occurred to you before. So go ahead, Marty.
And am I live? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. He came upon a certain place and stopped there for the night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. He had a dream. A stairway was set up on the ground, and its top reached to the sky, and angels of God were going up and down on it. And the Lord was standing beside him, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. The ground on which you are lying, I will assign to you and to your offspring.
Can't hear you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right.
A little louder.
Your descendants shall be.
This is as loud as I get.
I think that was someone's Alexa. I don't know. Go ahead. Go ahead, Marty. Keep going.
All right. Okay. Your descendants shall be as the dust and of the earth. You shall spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. And the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and your descendants. Remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you.
One more verse.
Okay. Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is present in this place, and I did not know it.
Okay. Now, I know most of us, if not all of us, have encountered this text before. We've experienced it. Some of us grew up at summer camp singing, a song about climbing Jacob's ladder, etc. Okay. But let's take a look at it. I have 3 to suggest new ideas about how we might understand this dream. Dreams almost definitionally, well, I would say definitionally are symbolic, right? They're not real in the sense that they exist in any physical, concrete way. So they're already symbolic, subconscious. Sorry, Betsy's printing all kinds of stuff here. I'm going to try to ignore that noise. Okay. So let's start with ourselves and then zero in on how the rabbis of various midrashim look at this dream. So what do we think is going on here? All right. Anyone want to take a crack at it? Yeah, David, go ahead, unmute.
I always think this dream is a consequence of what's said in the scene before with Isaac, where Isaac says, how'd you get this meal so fast? And he says, your God helped me. So I think it is almost a sequential passage where, in effect, God's saying, okay, we've straightened out the lineage question.
Birthright, yes.
We got to get this guy up to speed on the world that he operates in. So in a sense, the dream is saying God is present in the world. And the wonderful thing is that last phrase that you had us read, which is, and I didn't know it. So right. Jacob actually gets the message.
So this is a step on the path, not the last, but the second step on Jacob's path to spiritual maturity. Right? And I think, by the way, that is true if you not only look at the prequel, but you look at the sequel, right? Where he continues to grow spiritually. And we'll get to that later if we have time, right? But this is the second step. And by the way, has anybody visited the place of this dream in the Negev when you've been to Israel? Raise your hand if you visited this place. No one. Why not? Yeah, Roy, go ahead.
Why not? I was actually thinking about it, wanting to go visit there, but I don't know. I haven't done the research about it. So if you could explain if it's possible to visit. The Torah says it was the second most named place in Torah outside of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead.
I don't think we know where it is.
Exactly. And that's intentional. So Roy, we just saved you hundreds of hours of research. Okay? Because it is a nondescript place. First of all, where is it? Generally, it's in the desert, right? And he just lies down. He's exhausted from running. He just lies down in some place. And by the way, what does he use as his pillow?
A rock.
Just a rock. An ordinary rock.
Huh.
And then at the end, we haven't finished yet, but when we do finish this, the last part of this scene, he takes that ordinary rock from an ordinary place and he makes it into a holy shrine. In other words, he sanctifies the ordinary. And this, to me, is essentially, this is the essence of spirituality, is this idea that there's no place devoid of a spiritual presence, of God's presence. That there is nothing ordinary about anything or anyone. That there is no such thing as a small miracle. It's all a miracle. You know, Heschel kind of said, Heschel said, I'm paraphrasing, but basically you live in one of two ways. Either everything is amazing or nothing is amazing. And I'll tell you a story. Some of you may have heard this before. I can't remember if I shared it with this group. So we live on a little street off the top of Stone Canyon, and I live in what I call Baja Bel Air. Okay. Now, down below in like the Bel Air that comes to people's minds. If I walk a couple miles down, mile and a half down Stone Canyon, Jared Diamond lives on Stone Canyon. Jared Diamond is the professor who wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel. It's an opus. It's a massive, incredible piece of work that explains why certain civilizations ascended and succeeded and why others failed. And he started as a I believe a cultural anthropologist and biologist. So he walks around our neighborhood with binoculars all the time, looking up in the trees. And it's not like we live in some nature preserve. I mean, it's West LA. It's like, I don't know what the hell he's looking at. And he's out there almost every day. So one day I was walking by him and I said, "Hey, Jared, how you doing?" "Great. How are you?" "Great." And I said, "What's it?" And he had his binoculars. I said, "What's interesting today?" And he looked at me and he said,
Everything.
"Everything is interesting." And okay, I felt like this big because my first thought was, well, that's why he's Jared Diamond and I'm not. Lori, where are you? Lori Rosen just sent us an amazing. Lori, can you unmute? Lori, are you there? Oh, she can't. Okay, Lori can't come on. But so Lori was his assistant apparently for years, which is crazy. But so she understands the character. So this idea, I believe, this idea that God is in this place, and I didn't know it. And the answer that the question invites is essentially, where is God? Right? Because the answer becomes everywhere. But I would add to it and say also nowhere. Let me explain what I mean. The Kotzker Rebbe, Hasidic rabbi, 18th century, I believe. There's a story about him that he was teaching a class surrounded by his disciples. And one of them raised his hand and asked, "Where is God?" He asked the rabbi, "Where is God?" And all the other students in the class laughed at him because isn't it obvious, particularly based on this verse, that God is everywhere? So what a stupid question. This is like Yeshiva 101, God is everywhere, right? But the Kotzker Rebbe did not laugh. His response was, God is wherever you let God in.
Oh.
It's a deeper, more nuanced reading of the verse. God was in this place. Sure, yes, God is everywhere, but I didn't know it. So God is wherever you let God in, meaning God can be everywhere or nowhere. God can be always or sometimes. And I'm going to connect this back to this ladder dream in a moment. Now, so that's sort of the setup for the first insight about this dream that I find important. Let's look at the verse super carefully. Verse 12, okay? He had a dream. A stairway, or you could say a ladder, was set on the ground and its top reached to the sky. And the angels of God, now here's the important part for this interpretation, were going up and down on it. Does that sound right to everyone? Is that what you would expect the text to say? Up and down? Donna?
No, you wouldn't expect it because supposedly the angels are up in heaven, so they'd be coming down here first.
Right.
And then going up. But I guess what this is saying is that the angels are down here with us, and it's whether we connect with God, whether they're going to
Yes. If
He
the
does.
angels begin below, and let's accept this is a deliberate text. It wasn't random or a mistake that the author of this text began with the angels going up and then down. All right. And Sue, go ahead.
Well, doesn't that go along with what you just said about the idea that God is everywhere if you let him in?
Exactly.
So in other words, the
So
angel,
who's the initiator, right? Human beings are the initiators, not God. Penina, make sure you unmute.
Okay. We have to look at a point where how we decide where he's going. What was the decision to go where he's going? He's going to meet his brother. The brother right now
No,
does not follow.
He's going to meet his uncle.
Which one you talking about?
Yaakov is going to meet his uncle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I think the whole idea is that the idea of the one God wasn't yet embedded into everybody at the way we look at it today with our deductions. Now, he has now this, it feels like a responsibility that he has to continue believing in that God that his father believed in and his grandfather. And he's going to meet a person that he doesn't know what their beliefs are, because we know that even the brides stole idols and brought it with them more than one occasion.
Right.
Okay.
So I think
I think this is like a self, like he has a war with himself to at what price he's going to.
Yeah. All right. So I think
do this deal that he's going to do.
I think there's a lot of support for what you're saying in the text, and we're going to get to it.
Okay.
Because I agree with you.
Okay.
But for now, let's stick with this down and up part.
Okay.
That humankind needs to be the initiator. Okay. Now I'll tell you a beautiful story. 17th century Italian rabbi. It's meant to be a story about prayer, but I think it's really also about this larger idea of humankind, each of us being the initiator or being open. So he talks about an Italian fisherman on a boat, and the boat is tethered to the shore. It's tied to the shore with a rope. And the fisherman is pulling the boat into the shore. Okay? And the rabbi says, now, if you knew nothing about the physics of the world, if you knew nothing about how the world works, and you were observing this scene, you might think that the fisherman was pulling the shore to the boat. And he said, that's the mistake people make about prayer and spirituality. They think that it's about pulling God closer to them. Like the fisherman would be pulling the shore to the boat. But that is a mistake made by people who don't really understand the physics and metaphysics of spirituality. You don't pull God closer to you. You pull yourself closer to God. And so we start here with this seemingly innocuous verse because it happens in an innocuous place. We just saved Roy years of wandering in the Negev. But the message embedded in this idea of the sanctity of the ordinary and the sanctity of human beings being dependent upon our perspective, not God's, is a very powerful idea. And I think the root of all spirituality. And it's so,
Wait, could you say that again? Could you say that again? Sorry.
I'm not sure.
It's like so good, but I'm like, wait, did I catch it all?
Well,
Sorry.
first of all, Pam, it's recorded. We're recording this. So you can go back, and Susan will get to you in a second. But what I was really saying is that this idea that spirituality is ultimately rooted in human perspective, not God's perspective. Like in other words, like there's a saying in the Talmud: we don't see the world as it is; we see it as we are. Right? And anyone who asks where is God, you can't just say everywhere or anywhere, because it's also nowhere unless you are pulling yourself closer to God, unless you are open and receptive to God. A way to think of it, Pam, is like air, right? You could say that it's everywhere, but only if you take it in. And so it's everywhere and potentially not within us. And interestingly enough, I didn't even think of this when I made the comparison. The word for like spirit and wind, same word, ruach. The word for soul, neshama, comes from the verb to breathe, linshom. Think about that for a moment. The word for soul and the word for breathing or breath, same word. So I think the air and taking it in metaphor works really, really well on all of those levels. And ultimately, this little story about people thinking you can pull the shore to the boat is very instructive. Okay, so point one, that's one view and journey that this dream sequence in the Torah takes us on. Now, let's try a completely different way. Now, I know we have a couple raised hands. Sue Ehrlich, right? Susan, you had your hand up, right? But unmute. Make sure you unmute. Wait, Susan, you're muted. You have to unmute. Okay.
First of all, I'm so glad you're bringing this up and so nicely. And your book, The Extraordinary Nature of Ordinary Things, is a classic. And I know it came out a few years ago, but
no, listen to this.
Yeah.
They just reissued it in hardcover.
Wow.
It came out like a few weeks ago again. So
great.
there you
it's
go.
a good gift item to other people too. But and this is a key story. I love it. And something that I think you said some years ago in Torah study, that these angels are also within Jacob. And I take that psychologically, that Jacob's better self, and he's struggling with his trickery and which stuff he's going to do. So if I got it correctly, I
did, and let me explain, because that's one of the three. That's one of the three ideas that I thought I would raise, and they're endless. But so the Hebrew is ambiguous. It is almost always translated as, well, let me go to the text, okay? So verse 12, okay, v'hine sulam, and there was a ladder or a stairway. Mitzav arza v'rosho, I can't, I'm losing, magia shamayma. So it was rooted in the ground, and its top went all the way into the heavens. V'hine malachei Elohim, and behold, there were angels or messengers of God. Now get this, olim v'yordim bo. Now, olim v'yordim, going up and coming down, bo. That word, bo, can mean one of two things. Both are 100% legitimate translations. One, it can mean that the angels were going up and down on it, meaning the ladder. And that's almost always how it's translated. However, Olim v'yordim bo could also mean up and down within him, within Jacob. And so, yes, Susan, many, many modern commentators, I have not found this in an ancient in midrashim from the past centuries. Only modern commentators, post-Freud, for obvious reasons,
Yes.
see this as an internal struggle within Jacob, his better self and his lowly self. As David said, the man who conspired with his mother to deceive his blind father and steal the birthright, and the man who wakes up and says, God is in this place and I didn't know it, who is being awakened to a new kind of awareness and spirituality. And this could very well be this inner struggle between what the rabbis call the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer HaTov. Every human being's inclination for evil and inclination for good.
I should just add another one is that there's a belief that angels have a specific purpose. And they come and help in that purpose, and then they go back, and then other angels come for the other purpose. So it could be this is a journey of his spirit, his soul. One angel would
And
out of there, and the other one's going to accompany him to Haran.
And it reminds me of a really important whole truth as opposed to a half truth that I first heard put well by Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the Gulag trilogies. And he knew a thing or two about evil. So Solzhenitsyn said that the line between good and evil is not a line between us and them. It's a line that runs down the middle of each of us. And this is what the rabbis were talking about with this inclination for good and this inclination for evil. That it's not like it's non-binary. The world is not divided between good people and bad people. The world is made up of people who are sometimes good and sometimes bad, and we all need to make those decisions many times a day. We're all often engaged in this inner conversation about who we really are. And here it's interesting, we're also engaged in it subconsciously in this dream. So that's a whole nother world of interpretation, which I find really, really, what's the word? Human, accessible, honest, and deeply Jewish because it's nuanced. Someone yesterday, I was being interviewed by someone who's doing some strategic planning for us, and almost every question she asked me, I said yes and no, and I wasn't trying to be cute. And I said, I'm giving you the most Jewish of all perspectives, the most Jewish of all answers, yes and no, sometimes, maybe, and in many ways, this is a Jewish perspective, nuance and duality. I think Judaism is very much about dualities, the duality of memory, the duality, the tension between goodness and evil, right? All of these things, the duality between an inner and outer life, the duality between our own tribe and the rest of the world, all of it. So in any case, yes, interpretation number 2, this is an internal subconscious struggle, which later becomes a conscious struggle. Okay. Now, the third interpretation, which is kind of so obvious, we don't hit on it very often, is to see this ladder as a metaphor for Jewish history and the history of Jews and their relationships with other nations. And what I mean by that is that God, so there's this promise, right? There's this promise made by God that this land will be yours and your descendants will be as the dust of the earth. But it hasn't always been the case, as we know. And so the rabbis, some of them in their midrashim, interpret this as a sort of metaphorical example of the dynamics of history and our relationship as Jews with that history. That there are nations that rise, and sometimes they oppress us, conquer us, exile us, even incinerate many of us. But they always eventually descend. Because the power at the top of that ladder is God. And you can see how comforting this would be as a midrash, for example, during the persecution of the Roman Empire, which ultimately does fall, right? As does the Ottoman Empire, as does Greek society, as did Nazi Germany. That and that in a sense, God's promise to us ultimately holds, and that ultimately other nations may rise and fall, and our fortunes may rise and fall as a people, our safety, our security, our numbers, but ultimately at the top of that ladder is a God who protects the Jewish people. Stacy, go ahead.
So, Rabbi, I don't know if this is a proper inference or not, when you're talking about, other nations try to destroy us, etc. Are you saying then, are you inferring that God had a hand in that? Or we don't even know that? I don't know.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Let me
Classic
explain.
answer. Classic.
Let me explain. And I think it will help when we get to the next few verses about Jacob's promise to God. Look, there are a lot of answers to that. There are a lot of theological answers to that. The classic answer that the Torah would give you, if I was speaking to you now as the Torah, I would say that we bring these disasters upon ourselves because of our immoral behavior as a people or as individuals. That this isn't evil, this is punishment for sin. That our relationship with the land is conditional upon our fidelity to Torah. That's what the Torah would say. If the book of Deuteronomy could speak, that's what it would say to you. Okay? God made a conditional promise. If then, right? If you will obey me, if you will observe my commandments, then I will protect you and you will, chase your enemies out of the land. And the implication then, I guess it's sort of a half truth. The implication is, and if not, you're going to suffer. So that's the Torah's answer to the question, that very much like we were talking about human beings being the initiator of a spiritual connection, and we all thought that was great. We loved that. We may not love so much the other side of that, which is, well, then human beings may very well also be the initiators of the downfall of certain societies and a certain amount of suffering. And so the perspective there would be that evil is not a God problem, it's a human problem. Now, would I ever say that to the parents of a 5-year-old who was killed in a car accident? No. I wouldn't. Because I don't believe it. I don't believe it's that 5-year-old's fault or anyone else's. But this is the old time religion you're asking me about. This is Torah religion. And I would be unfair to the question and the tradition if I didn't answer it in that traditional way. It doesn't work for me. Not everything in the Torah works for me. I'm not interested in stoning homosexuals to death. I'm not interested in slaves. So I think that's just an honest assessment of where we are. Okay, I want to move forward because, oh my God, it's impossible to be 12:43 already. Okay, we're going to move forward and we're going to have to move fast because this is the most troubling part for me and for most people of the Torah portion. So I want to jump ahead. Let's go to chapter 28. Marty, you with us?
I'm with you.
Okay, I want to go to chapter 28, verses 20, 21, and 22.
Jacob then made a vow saying, if
Okay,
God remains
now,
with
just
me.
wait one sec, Marty. This is the first vow in the Torah.
Okay.
This is big. This is the vow template for everything that follows in terms of vows. Kol Nidre, you know that Kol Nidre thing? What that says is, what that means, Kol Nidre is all our vows. Okay, so the Super Bowl of services is called Kol Nidre, all our vows. And it all starts here, first vow. Go ahead.
Okay. Jacob then made a vow saying, if God remains with me, if he protects me on this journey and that I am making and gives me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and I shall return safe to my father's house, the Lord shall be my God. And this stone which I have set up as a pillar shall be God's abode. And of all that you give me, I will set aside a tithe for you.
A tenth, right. All right, now, what is the problem we have just encountered? Anyone?
If then.
Merle, go ahead. Unmute.
Okay. I feel like when I read this that he's making promises that I'm not so sure he can keep.
Who's making promises?
Jacob. Well, a vow to me is a promise.
Right.
So he's saying, if you do this for me, God, then I'm going to do this for you.
So,
and can we guarantee that in reality? I don't think so.
Which part? God's part
Any
or
of it?
Jacob's part?
Any of it.
Okay. All right, Risa, go ahead.
It's the other side of the conditional that we were just talking about. It's an if then. And that's
what is the if and what is the then?
The is if I return safely, okay, then you will be my God.
Okay. Does Donna go ahead?
Well, it strikes me as not much of a promise. It's kind of like, if you do this, all this good stuff for me, then I'll believe in you. But 5 minutes ago, you noticed that God was present in this place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's sort of back to this bargaining kind of thing that he's doing. It's sort of the old trickster coming back to some extent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Penina, go ahead. Make sure you unmute.
Okay. Again, it has to do that he is not in a bubble. In this dream, he figures himself in this situation where he has this struggle, but he doesn't live by himself. It all depends of where he's coming from and where he's going and why. And the reason that I said before Esav is because it's the same situation. They both chose different ways of life. is the person that he's going to meet, he doesn't know what do they believe. So he doesn't even know if he's going to love them or not. And maybe he doesn't know where he'll be himself. That's where the struggle is.
Yes, I think so. Penina is pointing to something that is the way the rabbis understand this without accusing Jacob of immature spirituality. Or
we already know that to believe it was a process. It didn't happen in one day.
Right.
The whole idea was, I'm reading this book now again. It's called From the Period from Abraham to Ezra. I found this guy in 19 something that I made the paper on him. And he's so brilliant that somebody is writing a book about him now, how brilliant he was. His name is W.F. Albright. And he says that the whole idea was that they needed a way to fix social life, social justice. They were exposed to such terrible things with worshiping gods that it's not so easy to go and follow this way, because they were sacrificing firstborns.
Right.
They were
So
sacrificing people.
Right.
And then what does he do? Does he accept it and then be alienated and get back into this hell life that they lived, worshiping idols, with the slaves building tombs to the dead? That's what Egypt was doing. They were very impressed by the Egyptian
So let me okay,
so
let me
the
flip.
idea is he going with social justice to be kind and to be fair, or is he going because he needs a wife to go back to this terrible life that
So Penina,
the idol worshippers are walking?
So to put it simply, like as the rabbis would in these midrashim, I'm going to read one of them to you, is that Jacob's doubts, most people read this and they say, Jacob's doubting God. What Penina is saying and what the rabbis are saying is, no, you're reading it at the wrong level. Go deeper. Jacob is doubting Jacob. Like, if I am able to live this life, then my name will be associated with God.
Right.
But if I am unable to live up to these standards, my name will not be associated with God. In other words, he's sort of saying, especially at the end, God, if you will give me the possibility, the opportunities to serve you, then I will be able to do that. If you give me the possibility to serve me, give to me so that I may give to you, enable me to be what you want me to be. So this is Jacob doubting Jacob. This is a new religion. As Penina said, he's in a pretty seductive place. And we all just talked about that inner struggle we all have between good and evil, between our best selves and something less than our best selves. And this is Jacob's self-doubt. I don't know that I'm worthy of this. If I am, you're going to be my God. If I'm not, you won't be. And I want to read you something. Let me see if I have time. I do. So this is from the Midrash Breshit Rabbah. Okay. So Rab Huna said, because the rabbis were bothered by this seeming quid pro quo, this quid pro quo theology that you get if you read it on the surface. So here's Breshit Rabbah. Rav Huna said, in the name of Rav Ava, it is stated, and behold, I am with thee. And it is also stated, if God will be with me. But from here, may we conclude that there is no promise for the righteous in the world. That you could go either way, any one of us. And we could merit or not to be associated as a Jew. Now, Ramban, Moses Maimonides' grandson, explains that the reason for the condition, the if qualification, was lest sin should intervene. Jacob then did not cast doubts on the Almighty's word. He displayed no lack of faith in the Almighty, but impugned his own ability to be faithful.
There we go.
Perhaps, and this is Penina's point, perhaps as a result of his long stay at his uncle's home in an alien environment, which is where he's headed, he might succumb to heathen influences.
There we go.
He doubted his own ability to withstand temptation. He might not ultimately prove worthy of the kindnesses promised to him by God. Perhaps sin would soil him. Jacob did not cast doubts on God or God's credibility, but on himself and his capacity to withstand temptation. And this, of course, this midrash was not written during the time of Jacob. This midrash was written when Jews were being seduced by Greco-Roman culture, right? By hedonism, not by the temple, but the gymnasium, right? And this continues to be a struggle for all of us. For all of us.
And we also have to say that these people destroyed themselves.
Well, that's
the Greek fell when the Roman Empire came up.
That's the up and down.
That's why the Maccabees were able to succeed.
So that's sort of the up and down historical metaphor. But here we're talking, again, ultimately, what does everything we're talking about today have in common? It places the responsibility, it places the initiative, it places the opportunity on us, not on God.
Right.
Heschel wrote a great book called Man in Search of God. He also wrote a great book called God in Search of Man. So this is the interplay that defines a Jewish life. And, are we worthy? And the answer is?
We're trying.
Yes and no.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Exactly.
It
Sometimes.
depends.
Yes, it depends. And so, listen, my wish for everyone is that we are worthy more often than not. Right? That's what it means to be human and to be engaged in the struggle.
It reminds me of where you began when you were having the interview. You couldn't answer yes or no. Well, it's the balance of maybe, maybe not.
Right, exactly. And the answer sometimes. I think it was Yitz Greenberg, who was a very important modern Orthodox rabbi. He founded Klal, if you know what that is. And he said, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but he said something like, faith is not a question of yes or no. Faith is a question of sometimes. And that's from an Orthodox rabbi, a modern Orthodox rabbi with a PhD in philosophy, but nevertheless, an Orthodox rabbi. And you have this duality explored in Judaism a million different ways. This is where that midrash about in one pocket we should carry a phrase that says the world was created for me, and in the other pocket carry a phrase that says I am but dust. Right? This tension, this struggle, this internal dialogue, which I have to say, one of the reasons I'm so proud of most Jews most of the time is we tend to be on the right side of that line and the right side of that struggle, more than not. Okay, any last, I have 2 minutes and I have to get to Burbank by 2:00. So wish me luck.
Good luck.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just wish everyone a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos, and I may not see you till what we Jews in America affectionately refer to as the holidays are over. So I hope you have a beautiful time with your family and your loved ones. And if those of you who are traveling, travel safely and have a beautiful time. And
you stay well.
yes,
Yeah.
I'm
Thank you.
doing. Thank you so much, and
Thank
Shabbat
you.
Shalom,
Thank you.
everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.
Rebecca,
Thank you.
Rebecca,
Bye-bye.
don't go away.
Great. Thank you,
Where is
Steve.
she? Rebecca,
Happy New
where
Year.
is she? Where is she? Okay, never mind. I found a book that I think everybody should read. And you guys, if you are interested, it's an old edition in a very old bookstore. If Risa, that's going to be amazing. It's called from biblical period, from Abraham to Ezra. It's not in the market anymore. I found it in a very old book collectors. And you guys, I recommend that you should try to find it. It's by William, what's his name? Albright. William Maxwell Albright, not Jewish, he's British.
British is not
Thank
Jewish.
you.
Yeah, he's dead, probably not. He was involved in this interpreting the Dead Sea Scrolls. He was on TV and everything, and he wanted to see if Jesus is mentioned in the Jewish Bible. So they didn't find it. He wasn't mentioned, but he's a genius. And yeah, I think the people who collect it, they are like a monastery or something. My girlfriend found it because she's into those things. It's very old. They cleaned it out, but it was $1.45 when it first came out, and my teacher wanted me to get it, but we couldn't find it. So between two copies, we used to switch it and move it around with the two students. So we can use it. And I did the paper on it, and I have the paper of all these years. I'm talking many years. And now it's like $33. And the place, it's a cloister library. A cloister, you know what a cloister is? It's a, yeah. Anyhow, so if you're interested, you guys should read it. I think it's going to open up the field of all these bioarchaeological findings a lot. Okay. Have a nice holiday. I mean, Shabbos. And
Thank
you tonight.
too.
Say hello to your husband.
Thank you.
Be well,
tonight.
everybody.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye.
weekend. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.